Thank you so much for tuning in to Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa. On this episode, we'll be going over new music from Kacey Musgraves, the Voidz, and Bishop Nehru. Like I said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're not familiar with what happens on this show, I basically go through different albums that have come out throughout the weeks and let you know what I think. Because I know it can be a little overwhelming to, go through all the different releases and really know what's good, what you should be listening to. Well, opening up this episode, we'll be talking about the newest from Kacey Musgraves. This is called Golden Hour. Well, if you're not familiar with Kacey, she is a country artist that has turned a few heads because although, her sound is very more traditional country, leaning with more, of a light pop sound. Lyrically, she's really not afraid to tell you what's on her mind. And sometimes her views, are a bit controversial for a general country audience. That's definitely one of the things that made me like her from the beginning. She's released 2 great albums already, Same Trailer, Different Park, and Pageant Material, and also a Christmas album that she just released 2 years ago. But on this one, it's still country, but definitely more adventurous when it comes to the sound. It takes on kind of like a soft rock sound at times. So this kind of reminded me a lot of what Little Big Town does. And there's also a few surprises here, like later on, when she mixes in a bit of disco into the mix. And on here, lyrically, she usually, has more some witty remarks in her lyrics. But here, she's really more just focusing on the wonder of life and love. The album opens up really nicely with the acoustic track Slow Burn, in which she's talking about being okay with taking things slow. Then we move into the light and breezy Lonely Weekend, in which she's talking about the loneliness she's going to have on the weekend without her love. This track very much gave me Sheryl Crow vibes, and that's something that you hear throughout this album. The next track, Butterflies, is one of the singles released from this album, and this also has a nice soft breeziness to it, and also some light electronic touches on her vocals. Here she's talking about the breath of new life that came into her when she met her love. The electronic touches remain on the next track, Oh What a World, as it opens up with this little passage that has vocoder on the vocals. On here, she's just discussing the wonder that she feels from life itself, especially now that she has her love in it. Mother is a short piano ballad in which she's just talking about the passing of time and also having a longing for her mother being nearby. Love is a Wild Thing is a sweet little song that has more emphasis on the banjo as she's just talking about how crazy love can be. There are some nice little slide guitar touches that I really enjoyed on this track. The next, Space Cowboy, is another single released from this album, and this one talks all about letting people go. If they want to go, just let them go. They were never really meant to be caged in the first place. And this one had a nice little key change that happens right before the last chorus comes in. Wonder Woman is another really breezy track in which she brings in a little bit more wit on the lyrics, as she's telling someone for them not to expect her to be Wonder Woman, and she won't expect the same thing in return. Then we come to High Horse, which is my personal favorite on this album. This is very much still country, but with a disco influence, as she's talking about a guy who basically thinks that he's the shit. And she could really do without having people like this in her life. A little nice thing that happens on this track is the little call and response between herself and the guitar on the melody. On the title track, Golden Hour, we get a nice, bright, sunny sound as she's talking about how amazing her love makes her feel. And then the album closes with the piano ballad Rainbow, in which she's basically saying, although it seems like it's always cloudy and raining on you, just be aware that there is always a rainbow above. Overall, I really enjoyed this album. It has a nice, sunny, breezy sound, very much reminded me of Sheryl Crow, and lyrically here, very simple stuff. Just talking about the wonder of life and love, and really discovering those things for the first time. If I were to say there's anything wrong with this album, is that it kind of stays within that same sound a little too much. When a song like High Horse comes around, and then you get a big shift with the disco influence, that one really stands out. So I would have maybe enjoyed a little bit more experimentation with the sound in that way. But overall, a great album from Kacey. I'm going to give this album a score of an 8.5 out of 10. So it comes with a high recommendation, and I really hope you guys give this a listen. Next up on the show, we have the second release from the Voidz. This is called Virtue. Now, the Voidz is a side band from Julian Casablancas. He is the frontman of The Strokes. And throughout the Strokes discography, they have tried to experiment a bit with their sound, but it seems like their fans are much happier when they have, than when they kind of stick to their signature sound. So I'm glad that Julian has this new band, the Voidz, in which he's able to go and tinker around and try something vastly different and not be afraid to really rock the boat. And I did not check out their debut album, but I did hear a few songs from this before it came out. It caught my attention, and I very much enjoyed this a lot. The songs that I didn't enjoy as much were the ones that had more of a Strokes vibe going on. But on the ones where they do more experimentation, I felt that these were much stronger. So let's start off with the tracks that I thought were the strongest on the album. And we can take it all the way up to the top with the opening track, Leave It in My Dream. Now this is one that did give me more of a Strokes vibe. It has a much catchier sound. And here he goes into his higher register on the hook. And also has a uniquely but well executed solo in here. The second track, Curious, or at least that's how you say it. This has an Eastern influence brought on by not just his vocals, but also by the keys and the guitar. This is a very weird track, but one I really enjoyed. Pyramid of Bones gives us a harder rock edge as it starts off with a great guitar riff, but there's still a lot of experimentation going on throughout this track, and it actually has a real chaotic moment, especially in the ending. Here he's talking about people that abuse their white privilege. They play the game by different rules, insisting it's all equal. I love the beat going on the next track, Alien Nation. This also has real heavy bass and a whistle-like synth throughout the song. Lyrically, this leans a lot more political as he's talking about murdering others in the name of personal security. All Words Are Made Up is a funky track with some tropical sounding percussion and a genuinely catchy hook. And this starts to end at the perfect time, right where it starts to lose its steam. Think Before You Drink is a great acoustic track warning to not fall victim to the thing that our institutions, like school, like to pass on to us as the truth. Pink Ocean was a personal favorite of mine. Here we have a cool synthy bass groove, crystallized guitar work, and synth solos as he repeats the line, "I want out of this world." I also love the ending here where we get a killer guitar solo. Lazy Boy was another especially catchy song, especially on the chorus, as he's talking about not wanting to be held up to this idea that people may have of him. Aside from the Voidz, he is the frontman to what many consider one of the best bands of the last 20 years. Where We Were is a more aggressive track that has a lot of shifts and some wild instrumental breaks. Here he talks that despite our advances with technology, socially, we're back where we were in the beginning. Then the album closes with Pointlessness, which is a somber synth-led track, in which he's asking if anything matters. And the answer to him ends up being no. What's the point to it all? This has a real sinister, intense ending. Other tracks that were pretty good, but not great, were the ones that I felt more of a Strokes influence with. Permanent High School was one I generally enjoyed, more of a new wavy sound here. Others included on this list that were pretty good were Wink, My Friend the Walls, and Black Hole. Overall, I was really pleased with this release. I'm shocked. I was not expecting to like this. But, the ones that I generally enjoyed the most are where I got more of that experimental spirit to the songs. This is going to get a score of an 8 out of 10 from me. So if you haven't given the Voidz a chance yet, I recommend you do it with this album. And the last album up for review is the newest from New York rapper Bishop Nehru. This is called Elevators, Act 1 and 2. Now, Bishop's real name is Markel Scott, and he's only 21 years old. But despite his age, he's already released 5 other projects before this, and he's already getting the attention of different people in the hip-hop community, people like Nas. And in fact, this album, the first half of it, is produced by Canadian producer Kacey, who's made a lot of noise for himself of late. He released a great debut, I think 2 years ago now, 99.9%. I highly recommend you check that out. And the second half is handled by a veteran of underground hip-hop, rapper-producer MF Doom, who has gained a lot of acclaim for his own work. And despite having production from 2 different people on here to split down the middle, I thought that collectively it worked together as a whole. The album opens up strong with the track Drifting, which gives us a steady beat and some nice flute melodies hovering above it, as he's claiming to be a great rapper and seeing others as being envious of him. But he's really not going to let himself be bothered by what these haters think. The next track, No Idea, didn't have the best production on it. It kind of sounded to me like a Fly Low B-side. And on here again, he's talking about the doubters and not really focusing on what they think, because he knows that he's destined for something much greater. The Game of Life had a great beat with a looped bossa nova feel. Here he tells the story of 2 people that didn't really have the best lives, but were finding ways to improve them. But in the end, it doesn't go well for them as they meet their demise, basically saying that life's not fair, but that's just the game of life. You never really know when it's going to be your turn to call it quits. Getaway had a nice bounce to the beat with a looped acoustic guitar and airy background vocals. Here he's talking about getting away from this life and finding his way to something much better. Up, Up, and Away features vocals from Lion Babe, and here she gave the track more of a soulful feel, because at times she sounds like Erykah Badu. And I also liked the strings that were incorporated into this track. Here again, he's talking about not focusing on what others think because he's looking to get to a higher place. And then we go into Act 2 as it starts off with the strong track Tasers. I really enjoyed the bass groove here, and again we get more of a bossa nova feel on the beat. Here he's preparing himself for whatever life is going to bring him. Again and again, gives us a more laid-back feel to start, but then as it keeps going, it gets much livelier and gets a nice lift from a horn section. Here he explains that he feels like he's living life in a cycle that just keeps going over and over, and he's looking for something much more than that. On Potassium, we get an okay skipping feel on the beat as he's talking about his confidence to be the best and how no one can really mess with him on that. Roller Coasters gave us a more soulful feel to the production with a synth melody that was very recognizable as he talks about just coasting along on the ride of life. And then the album closes with the strong, soulful sounds of Rooftops that has a really great horn melody. And here he's just talking about rising up to the top and getting to those rooftops. Overall, I really did enjoy the production on this album. I thought it was great. I loved how both producers, although they provided their own style to them, it worked together as a cohesive project. And lyrically, I thought that he was okay. I thought it was probably a little more one-sided, not really veering a lot from, finding his present place in hip-hop and wanting to rise above it. So he definitely has a good flow, but I would have appreciated a little bit more diversity in what he's talking about. So this album is going to get a score of a 7 out of 10 from me. Nothing incredibly impressive, but still a pretty good hip-hop release from Bishop Nehru. Well guys, that does it for this episode. Thanks so much for clicking play. I hope you enjoyed my reviews. If you did, make sure to leave a little comment at the bottom. And also, if you have recommendations, feel free to leave those there. While you're there, make sure to hit the like button, or you can subscribe and find out when the next episode comes at you. On the next one, I'm looking to talk about that debut album from Cardi B. So be on the lookout for that.